Good afternoon and welcome to Texan TV News. Today we have all three candidates running for Erath County Sheriff in studio today. We'll be conducting a little bit of a live forum and asking them some questions about their experience and how they plan to implement their policies and keep us all safer here in Erath County. So good afternoon to you three. If you could, please go ahead and introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your background experience. We'll start with you, Sheriff Bryant.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for having us. My name is Tommy Bryant, and I'm the Erath County Sheriff. My family moved to Stephenville whenever I was 10 years old, and I'm 55 now. I went through the school system here, graduated from Stephenville High School in 1979, started a career as a welder. A good friend of mine worked for the Stephenville Police Department and asked me to do a ride-along. Fell in love with it, so I went to work for the Stephenville Police Department in 1988, ran for sheriff in 1996, and I have been the Erath County Sheriff for 19 years.
Next we have Ms. Tish Lecroy. Ms. Lecroy, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us. As you said, my name is Tish Lecroy. Leslie's the official first name. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years. I worked 15 years for this gentleman at the sheriff's office here. I resigned in 2013, holding the rank of night shift sergeant. And that's about it. My entire career's been here.
And finally, Sergeant Clell Murray. Sergeant Murray.
Hey, thank you. Well, I've been with Tarleton for 25 years, started in 91, and have promoted to sergeant in 97. Been through a lot of the leadership schools that are offered through the state and through other programs, the Bill Blackwood College at Sam Houston State, and then FBI Leadership School a couple of years ago, and then finished my degree finally after a long break in the middle, but have been here really wanting to do more in law enforcement and go a little bit further.
Excellent. We'll start with a few questions, and I'll start with you, Sergeant Murray. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Erath County law enforcement?
Right now, the biggest concern I see is the impending problems with ISIS and issues coming from that. Homeland Security and current President Obama is saying it's more of a local law enforcement issue than a regional or national issue when they have the isolated incidents. And then the budgeting issues that we currently face are probably the biggest concerns that I'm seeing right now.
Ms. Croy?
The biggest concern with our law enforcement here is sheer geography. We have 1,094 square miles in this county, and only 15 square miles of that's incorporated. So the sheriff's office is responsible for over 1,074 square miles, 800 miles of road, and 19 communities, including 6 schools. And you can't get the manpower to cover that much area. So geography is the biggest obstacle, and to overcome that, we've got to get community involvement with the sheriff's office.
Sheriff Bryant?
Well, I agree with both of them, but on a personal level, the struggles that we face at my office is manpower in the jail and as far as deputies, and pay. My guys can leave and go to work down the road, either with Stephenville Police Department or DPS, and get a significant pay raise. So, my job every budget session is to go to the commissioners and the county judge and say, look, we need some help because we're going to lose some good people. So that's what I'm facing right now.
Do you have a plan in place, any of the three, if you were to be elected, about how you would implement these policies and respond to these challenges with the limited resources you both talked about?
Well, that's the commissioners. They control my budget. Okay, so I can only spend how much they give me. Okay, and a lot of those things, we do get the community involved. I've set up neighborhood watch programs throughout the county, which has helped our crime rate, go down. So we do get the community involved, and that's one way that we do help, because now they're calling in on situations that they used to not call.
And as for the other two?
Yeah, just expanding the neighborhood watch program. There's certain areas of the county that are still lacking that need to be reached. I plan to start monthly open forums. Like 1 month I'll have it in Morgan Mill, 1 month in Alexander, so that I can talk to people and they can talk to me to help cut out the middleman on that, what's going on. The use of social media now is so extraordinary. You know, people on their cell phones, things like that. We need to implement that at the sheriff's office. Everything we can to bring information in to help give us more eyes out there.
Well, realignment of some of the job titles and functions would help to put more people on patrol. I plan to interact myself some in the investigations and actual patrol functions to help with the manpower issue as backup officer or even investigations. With my position here at Tarleton, I've got to do a lot of investigations and a lot of training in that area, so I can help out more in that area to increase our manpower some without changing the budget right up front.
Excellent. And I know we are a rural community, but one topic that keeps coming up, and especially this election cycle at the national level, has been continuation of the war on drugs and drug problems and drug policies facing us as a national level. At a local level, how do you continue anti-drug operations and countering the flow of illegal drugs through Erath County? And do you believe that the way we've been going about doing that has been a success or a failure?
I think it's been a success. You know, we could always use more and more, but you know, my guys are hooked up with the Stevensville Police Department. They all work together. If you look at a copy of my jail log that we get every day, yesterday we had 84 people in my jail. Almost 95% of them were in jail for either a drug or an alcohol-related case. And the ones that were not in there for drugs or alcohol were in there for sexual assaults or theft, things that they did while they were high, or they were stealing your equipment to get money to go buy more dope. So yeah, but you know what? Erath County is not in nearly as bad a shape as some of our surrounding counties. I think all of our local law enforcement do a fine job working together to help stop as much of it as we can.
I would have to agree with him. Over the decade that I was there, the drug problem has reduced, and he has been proactive on that. But the sheer volume of stuff coming in from the neighboring counties that don't have what we have to enforce that is what we're combating right now. You know, some of the counties they've got a lot less tax base. Therefore, they can't hit the problem as much as we can, and it trickles over.
Well, I see that we have a continuing problem here on Tarleton campus. When you look at the Snapchat pictures and look at Yik Yak, you know, there's always somebody talking about drugs, or you'll see pictures of marijuana, you'll see pictures of pipe bongs and stuff like that. And it's a constant flow with the new influx of freshmen and stuff like that until we can get them educated and get them caught. And I really think a additional drug dog. The task force that we used to have, they're all gone, or they're controlled by different DA districts and stuff, and we don't have those to our use. And so we need to spend a little more time with proactive training to the patrol deputy to teach him how to interdict and to catch some of these cases. And I think that'd be something to help us a whole lot fight that battle on drugs.
Yeah, if we could have, you know, task forces like we used to.
Right.
That was but they disbanded, and you can't hardly put them together anymore. So
Why?
we just take what we can.
Why can we not put them
Because
together?
the DPS has
Is that
to run
what it is?
Yeah.
It has to be through DPS?
Yes.
That leads into my next question. What experience do you each have interacting with different law enforcement agencies and around the surrounding area and at the federal level?
Well, I've got a lot. I mean, we talked about the Eddie Ray Routh trial a little bit ago. I had you know, people from all over the world there visiting, you know, and doing what they were doing, and it's I was fortunate enough to have made some wonderful contacts in my 19 years as sheriff, that I had over 11 different law enforcement agencies working with us during the trial. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult. Tarleton was there. Mm-hmm. So you know, we had local, state, and federal law enforcement there at the trial helping us out. So, and I work real closely with all the local law enforcement here in Erath County and surrounding counties as well.
On the ground level, I've worked with Stephenville, DPS, Tarleton, almost every shift. Used to, the sheriff's office ran one person at night, which was me, and that Tarleton was the backup, you know, and it was, and then DPS or whoever, and we just interact so well together. I mean, Stephenville, one of the things is that we would know each other by name, by face, and that's really important if that's who you depend on. I didn't interact with the higher levels. I interacted with the ground, where you depended on somebody for your life and they depended on you on a call. So those are the people you get to know, and those are the people you trust.
Right. Well, I've had, in 25 years here at Tarleton, we've worked with a lot of different agencies coming in to do background investigations on our students. 15 years running a narcotics dog in 27 school districts around the area. I worked with all the different law enforcement agencies with those school districts to turn over jurisdictional fines when I'd find drugs at those other schools. I've worked with Texas Rangers on investigations. I've worked with the DPS on investigations. I did a year in Iraq and worked with different countries and different nationalities over there. So I've got quite a bit of experience dealing with different types of law enforcement and different type conditions from wartime to peacetime.
Excellent. Individually, I'd like to ask each of you, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment in your careers in law enforcement?
Me, myself, it's getting the experience that I've had. I've always loved being involved, helping, being out there, boots on the ground, doing things. The most rewarding, I think, for me was teaching in the police academy. I loved to instruct. I loved doing the firearms for the police academy when we had it. I did patrol tactics. I teach PPCT, which is pressure point control tactics, which is our defensive tactics we use in law enforcement here at the university. I've had the K-9, you know, those are all things that I really think, but finally finishing my education, getting the training that I have has really helped me prepare for this upcoming election.
Ms. Croy?
Greatest achievement I see is being the person, the go-to person. The person that everybody came to ask questions on regarding law or procedures. The person that was trusted when I showed up for backup. The person that knew what was going on, how to best handle a situation. The friends that I've made in other agencies. The getting through Tarleton while working full-time. My kids. It's not easy for them growing up in a law enforcement family, as you'll know. Spotlight's always on them. But everything I've learned and everything I'm going to learn, I'm really just excited. It's the best career ever.
Sheriff Bryant?
Well, for me, you know, there's a long laundry list of things that we've accomplished over the years, but I think bringing the citizens of this county together, I have always had an open door policy. You've never had to make an appointment to come and see me. I think that the citizens enjoy that type of atmosphere in their law enforcement leader. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of is that the closeness and the bond that we have with the citizens of this county.
Shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to talk to you all about your administrative experience. Could you, each of you, talk a little bit about how much experience you have supervising people and managing the amount of resources you'd have at your disposal if you were to be elected sheriff of Erath County?
Me, 19 years. Overseeing the jail, overseeing, you know, well, she can tell you. I mean, she worked for me for almost 15 years, and it's not an easy job. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, but yeah, I've got 19 years of it.
Ms. Croy?
Night shift was 8 people. Prior to being promoted to sergeant, I handled all the administrative stuff for my sergeant. Good man, not really much on computers and organizing. Did that for, how long was he sergeant? 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
10 years prior to being officially sergeant. So you got to work to people's strengths. You figure out what they like the most, and then you put that together and you accelerate that. I think that if you do something, face it positively, like that, you find out what people like, where their strongest points are, and then you pair them together. And then you can work around a lot of different issues that way.
Okay. Well, I promoted to sergeant in 1997. at Tarleton, and back then it was the one sergeant doing all the officers, all the shifts, and keeping up with everything. Then they eventually decided we needed a sergeant on every shift, and so we ended up promoting guys and to that. During my tenure over in Iraq, I started out as the training for the guys, doing their training before we went, and then I helped get the whole crew over to Iraq and being responsible for our movements and stuff. And then after getting in Iraq, I was promoted to shift supervisor for one of the teams. Then I'm promoted to a venue where we were covering 21 teams. And then our program manager had to make an emergency leave and go home, and I ended up being acting program manager until they could get somebody back in country from over there. And I was in charge of 64 dogs and 72 men, and keeping everything running smooth and interacting with all the different agencies coming in and out of our checkpoints for that time frame. So I've had a little bit of experience with managing people.
What do each of you consider to be your strongest asset and your strongest characteristic as a leader and as a manager?
I think.
Well, I'm sorry, Clay.
Go ahead. I think my strongest act is that I'm willing to get my hands dirty and get out there and work with them and lead from the front. I've always been a hands-on kind of guy that I like to get out there and do it with them. I'm not a spectator sportsman. I don't like to sit on the sideline and watch a whole lot. So I like to get in there and work with it. And I like to motivate people, not dictate to them or order them to do things, but let's get it done together and work as a team concept.
Ms.
Go
Crow?
ahead, sir.
Oh, what was the question? I'm sorry.
What do you consider to be your strongest asset as a leader and as a manager?
I've been able, with the resources that I've had over the years, I've been fortunate that I've been able to find people to put in positions that were great at what they did. You know, the way I've looked at me being sheriff all these years is as long as I can surround myself with qualified, common sense, you know, hardworking people, men and women both, that makes my job a whole lot easier. So I think being able to do that has been helpful to me.
Ms. Crow?
Highly organized. I'm highly motivated, and like Sergeant Murray here, I prefer to do things hands-on, but like Sheriff Bryant here, I know that there's a lot of administrative stuff to do, and I'm flexible like that, but my strongest thing is that if I say I'm going to take care of something, I do it, and that if something goes wrong under my command, I take responsibility for it and correct it. You'll never hear me say I didn't know, and you'll never hear me say I forgot.
I'd like to shift gears again and kind of ask each of you an individual question. You feel free to chime in for a comment, but I'd like to start with you, Officer Murray. You talked a bit about anti-terrorism at the beginning, and I know you have quite a bit of experience and training in that field. How do you plan to implement this, what you know in this field in a county with limited resources?
Well, the alert program that is currently being the go-to program that's picked up nationally and everything else, it's the factory standard or industry standard for now, is a very simple concept that you use normal, ordinary patrol deputies and stuff and teach them the tools they need to mitigate an active shooter or scenario such as that, and then educating the general public in the CRACE class that I teach. It teaches how to respond as a civilian and what to expect from a law enforcement response as well, knowing to keep your hands empty and in plain sight when the officer comes through, not to rush toward the officer, but keep your distance. So by educating people in tactics and how things happen, it will benefit us if that incident occurs at this location.
Ms. Lecroy, you've seemed a little bit unwilling to campaign traditionally as far as stickers and signs and all that good stuff goes. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you see as the strength of your campaign thus far for the Office of Sheriff?
Meeting people. I believe it's called walking the block, is what I was told. I preferred to go and meet people. I didn't hire somebody to put my signs out. Each person I talked to, and if they wanted a sign, I gave them a sign, but I've walked a lot of blocks. In fact, I had to put my good tennis shoes on. I couldn't do it anymore in my good shoes, so.
Sheriff Bryant, you've been in law enforcement in Erath County for 30 years nearly, and nearly sheriff for 20. How do you see how the county has changed in that time, and how have you adapted to these changes?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, when I first became sheriff, the jail would average about 30 people a day, and now we're close to 100 every day. we have gone from 6,000. We started keeping statistics in '97, and from '97 to '98, everything a deputy did, and she can tell you, either on view or you were told to dispatch to go do something. The first year, about 7,000. We're doing that a month now. So that, there's lots of people moving in. I think the Commissioner Brown said the other night, 2,500 a year are moving into Erath County. And I think just, that alone, is a tough thing to deal with.
Well, in conclusion, I'd like to give each of you a minute to kind of make a closing statement and speak to your strengths as a candidate. If you'd like to start, Sheriff Bryant.
Okay, thank you. Well, like I said, I've been your sheriff a long time, and almost 20 years, and I'm sure that I've rubbed some people the wrong way. There's no way you can't. However, I am one of those kind of guys that I will bend over backwards until my spine snaps to help you. And another thing that I've figured out all these years is that it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're not going to please everyone. But I can just tell you, as your sheriff, we'll continue to be proactive. We'll continue to try to keep up with for example, we just bought a drone not long ago. I never would have dreamt that I'd ever own a drone. But just keeping up with technology and letting people know what's going on, whether it be new laws or scams, just keeping the public informed of what's going on every day. And that's what you'll continue to get with me.
Ms. Lecroy?
Training. I offer you the best sheriff's office as far as training goes. They do minimum standards now. There's not a lot of budget. In-house is the way to do it. But I think if a football team trains every day, a sheriff's office should do it more than once a year. So I offer you a highly trained group of leaders if you elect me sheriff.
Sergeant Murray?
Well, I think that both their items are pretty good and strong. With the experience that I have in training, being a T-close instructor since '92, teaching firearms, and then instructor in several other issues, I can teach myself, teach the programs that most of the deputies need for their standards. Also in the management, taking care of the things that need to be done, but planning a budget ahead of time, pre-planning for events and training. And it's not really what's about best for me or best for Tish or best for Tommy. It's what's best for Erath County. What they think, what the community thinks they need in the new wave of law enforcement that's coming up will be the best benefit for us.
Excellent. Well, thank you all three for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure to have you, and I wish you best of luck in the campaign moving forward.
All right, thank you for having us.